Welcome to the Aegance Offscript Podcast, where we talk to industry leaders who share their stories, insights, and lessons, unfiltered and unscripted. I'm your host, Lawrence, and today I'm excited to be chatting with Johann Coetzee, co-founder and CTO at Toris Technologies. Now, Johann heads up the architecture, development strategy, and innovation at Toris, which is doing some really interesting work in custom software, systems, and helping businesses digitize workflows, modernize systems, and elevate their internal tech core. Johann, welcome. Let's jump straight in.
Thanks, Lawrence. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your podcast. And I really think it's something great you guys are doing. I like the concept that you're reaching out to businesses in the industry. And I think, especially if it's South African companies, we also have a voice, so I think it's good to be heard. And I'm very glad to be on your podcast. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, good to have you here. So could you give us a little bit more context around Toris Technologies, what it is that you guys do, and what are your areas of operations?
Sure, no problem. So Toris Technologies is a tech company first, right? We look at solutions for our clients, small businesses, all the way through to enterprise level. And we really specialize in custom applications to suit business needs. We also tap into a little bit of digital marketing on the side. That is one of the services we do offer. But really, it's all about the solutions. There's plenty of businesses out there that need advice, that need to grow in our economy. It's always tough, no matter which industry you're in. And I think the tech industry is so fast paced. When we look at all the innovation coming out, who knows what to do next? And that's really where we come in, where we try and assist our clients, and we give them advice, and we build their applications for them from the ground up. Because a lot of these applications you find out there, they're not really, we say they're out of the box applications. They try to cover as much as they can for all sorts of businesses. But yeah, each business is unique in its own way, and it needs its own solutions. And that's where we're sitting in the marketplace.
Amazing. And as the co-founder, what do you feel your core mission is within Toris?
Oh, wow. I would say really, if I had to look at a mission, it would be everything, right? But if we say, from a business perspective, where we started at, we really started as freelancers. A few years ago, we did some small jobs here and there, and trying to get our voice out, to say, listen, we understand there's all of these applications out there. But I think we've got something a little bit more to offer you, in the sense of efficiency, and business operations, automations, all of these small things bundled into a bigger package. And when we look at it from my perspective, I think really, I spent most of my time in sales back in the day. So when I started with software on the side, it was really a solution perspective. And combining it with sales, I thought, we can make a difference. Like I said, there's a lot of small companies out there that need to, or that have the want to grow, and they're not sure how to grow, how to become more efficient. And I think with the technology we've got today, it's possible for any small company to reach out to the stars, just with a little bit of efficiency, and looking at the internal processes, automation, and all of that. It actually escapes a beautiful picture once you take a step back and you look at the business and you say, our business, as an example, from Toris Technologies, we look at it and we say, okay, well, we've got a small team. How can we become more efficient? And because we apply some of these concepts within our own business, it's much easier for us to go to another small company and say, hey, we've done this. We've actually applied it, and we've seen the differences, and we believe it can work for you as well.
And if you had no constraints, what would the ideal technical future for Toris look like?
Oh, wow. So we'd love to move into the ag tech industry. I mean, it's a massive industry, and I think it's probably one of the leading tech industries in the world. If you look at how far the agricultural industry has come over many years. And I can say probably about 8 years or so ago, we were looking at graphs from the sky, and seeing what types of yields and harvests we get. And this is just a small part of it, where we had satellite technology. And the difference between then and now is absolutely tremendous. We've got a lot of hardware and we've got a lot of software working together to make farms more efficient. And that's definitely one place we'd like to get into, but obviously not limited to. There are many other industries. I think the fintech industry, they are very saturated, actually, if you compare the overall, how can we say, the business hunt. Everybody's out to get somebody as a client, and fintech is really full. Then you look at something like the medtech industry as well. There's miracles happening literally in the industry. And that perspective, that's also fantastic to get into. But again, as a small business, for us to compete in such a large market like that, that can take years of R&D in our own applications, our own hardware, things like that. So if I say, there's no blocks for us to move forward, and the stars are the limit, then I'd say like we'd tackle all of those industries, because we believe we've got a solution for a lot of them in many different capacities.
And speaking about those roadblocks, what's stopping you from attacking the ag tech industry, for example?
So really, at this current stage, Lawrence, I would say it's the hands, right? So as I mentioned, we're a small team, and we're scaling pretty fast. But in comparison to those that exist out there already, they've already got a lot of technology in the market, and the software is written, the hardware is built, and to now go ahead and try and compete directly with them at this level we are at now, at this current stage, that's a bit difficult. So if we have more hands on deck, the more we can get done. And I think that applies to many businesses out there, that when we talk about scaling, it's a very popular term in our industry. Everybody's talking about scaling, either you're scaling vertically or scaling horizontally, or it's really about the hands and the minds that you work with as well. You can have 10 developers on your team, but if 5 of them don't think the same way or don't have the same goals, that puts you back, and it can put you back a year or two. So really finding the team that thinks the way the company's vision is going, that's really the goal. And I think once you've got a good team, nothing stops you. It's just putting together that good team and just moving forward.
And can you recall a strategic pivot or maybe a technical innovation that you drove at Toris that has transformed how you operate?
Oh, yes. I mean, I think in the tech industry, we pivot, and you constantly pivot because of the technology. And I think a big move really came in with artificial intelligence being so prominent in the market, right? There's a big thing with what they call vibecoders nowadays. So we're a tech company that builds custom software. Now you have a guy that comes into the market and he says, I can build the same thing at a fraction of the time. Now, as a business, when we're looking at where are you related in pricing, a freelancer would be much cheaper, but the time frames usually took much longer. So if you're going to build a static business website, just as an example, the initial time frames would have been a month, 2 months, 3 months, depending on the scale of the project. And now somebody much smaller comes in and they say they can do it faster. Right, so now all of a sudden they are doing the same project in a month or 2 months, and they're competing head to head with you, but at a fraction of the cost. So we really had to pivot in the sense of we had to take artificial intelligence and apply it. And we can't we still believe solidly in providing good code, a clean product. And when we've got a quality product out there, we have less issues along the long term. especially at the scale projects we build enterprise projects. And if you go and look at the ChatGPT, Grok, and all of these AI products we have out there, and you say to them, I want to build an application. Some of these guys build applications, but the problem we're seeing is that, these applications can't scale. So when I say we had to pivot, we had to take some AI and we had to implement it to make our own operations more efficient. And at the same time, we had to ensure that we don't let AI actually drive our business, because that affects the quality of the products that we put out as well. So yes, it's a thin line. It's a very thin line to make sure that you still keep quality and efficiency at the same level.
And when you started to integrate AI into your internal operations, as you suggested, how did your team respond to that, and how long has it taken to embed?
So, so some of the guys, I can say they were pretty excited, and I think some of them got a bit ahead of themselves, in the sense of what AI can do. We can produce an HTML page in a few seconds, which is fantastic. But when we working with very complex stack, our one developer, he's keen on using AI, but you can never get him to move away from his architecture, and I think in our industry, architecture of the software, it plays such a big role in saying, how efficient is your software and how maintainable is it, because you can build something very big, but you can end up also maintaining this big thing, which might become, unmaintainable. So yeah, we've got a bit of a tug of war in the sense of how much should we use and where's the limit of applying it when we're talking graphics, because of some of the marketing things we do. Some of the applications like Gemini, for instance, it's a fantastic tool and you can really work well with it, but it has its limitations as well. And I think when we hit those limitations, we have to make a decision, is this the right thing to do? Is this right for the client we are working with in that sense? So it's really much of how efficient can we be without reducing the quality of work that we provide.
Yeah, absolutely. So how are you then ensuring consistency, maintaining code quality, and managing technical debt across multiple projects and your teams?
Oh, wow. So that you raised is probably one of the big pain points, as overall. I think the technical debt, when it comes to implementing AI in code, is tremendous, right? I think, and the reason for that being is that AI understands what needs to be done in the code, but it doesn't always cater for the most efficient way of doing it. So when we do implement AI in any specific projects that we're working on, when it comes to the code base, we do solid reviews. It's a lot of testing, it's a lot of code reviews. We go through the code, make sure that it is actually efficient and consistent. And I think really that's where the problem comes in on implementing AI in coding, is the consistency throughout. So you can work on something now and it will give you a specific result, and 2 hours later it did something similar but in a complete different way. So again, that creates the technical debt where you could have built one component to do that same thing, but because you implemented AI, it didn't think about what's been done before, 2 hours before, and it just recreated it with different syntax, in a different way. So yeah, it's a lot of code reviews if you have to implement it all the way. But that's why I say, it's a real balance between it. It's probably, 10-20% AI, and 80% still hard code, like where we've got myself, and the devs, we sit behind our keyboards and we type keys all day long. It's still, it has boosted our efficiency. I can say that for sure. Just implementing 10-20% AI in our process has definitely created this flow for us where we're able to produce more in a shorter time frame, purely based on analysis. And I think if we're looking at using AI for not necessarily debugging code, but looking at putting out a script which we created and saying, how efficient is this and can it be more efficient? And I think that's really where we are winning time, is by building it in that sense.
As Taurus grew as a company, were there any internal systems or processes that you introduced that you consider non-negotiable now?
Yeah, I think, as we scaled, we had to implement a lot of various different platforms. We've tried a bunch of them. So we've been on a lot of well-known platforms. Our main platform, especially GitHub, right? So version control in our industry is extremely important. Having our remote repositories, especially because we're a remote company. All of us work from home offices or remotely. The one guy might sit in a coffee shop and work for the day. So he needs to be able to do his work, still have internet if his internet is down at home. And he operates like that. So one of the big platforms that is obviously a must for us is GitHub. And that comes with its own advantages. They've got AI integrated into their systems as well, Copilot, and the amount of workflows we can build from there. But I must say, from various other platforms we've tried, we've been through, the likes of Notion, we've been through Monday.com, we've been through a lot of well-known brands. But we've always hit this roadblock to say, well, does this cater for our needs? And there have been very few platforms out there that we can say has catered exactly for our needs. And that's also one of the factors that drives our business, is we've been on these platforms and we go to our clients and say, we are familiar with these platforms. We've worked on them, and how do they work for you? And that's kind of when we're talking about the blanket products, which try and cover all the industries, all the businesses out there. They work until you start scaling. And then you kind of need something for yourself, your own little app that does this thing here. And the integrations we've started, even on our own side, there's a lot of tools that we built ourselves. You can go and there's 10 free apps out there that you can use, or there's 10 paid apps out there that you can use. And subscriptions end up costing a lot for tech companies. It's one of, I must say, besides salaries, and that when you look at expenses as a tech company, you look at subscriptions. And that actually takes quite a chunk of cash flow throughout the annual period. So when we realized this kind of shift where we needed to, or the shift we had to make, we said, if we look at the financial implications of having all of these great subscriptions versus just taking 5 hours or 10 hours and quickly building one ourselves. And we ended up doing that, and we ended up building quite a few tools we use in-house now. And it's purely for us, right? We're developers, we're web developers, we're app developers. And there are these things, small things that we need on a daily basis. We just build them, and then we use them, and then we go and sell them. So that's really what it's about.
Well, I was going to say that's the beauty of being a dev house, is that if there's ever a technical shortfall somewhere in the team is able to build something to cover that gap.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. Even the AI integrations, we do all of those, so when it comes to the lack of, especially in content creation, I think marketing is probably one of the biggest industries impacted by artificial intelligence. Because, we work with a company in Germany, and they've used models all these years, and models get expensive for photo shoots and all of those things. So they have hired a model or two. They take a few pictures, they get the consent from the model, and they run these through AI generators. And now, instead of having a photo shoot every week or every month, they have a photo shoot once a quarter. And that's how it's improved for them. And they can add their product with this model into a picture, and we generate a whole video with it. So there's a big pivot when it comes to the marketing side. All the way from, if you look at very popular tools, even like SEMrush, It's probably one of the most impactful tools in the industry for search engine optimization. So if people are building websites, they want to get out there. And if you're looking at the pricing for one of those packages, a lot of the small companies can't afford to spend that amount of money monthly to use these tools. So again, they've implemented AI. So now you're paying quite a bit for the actual platform. But having that AI integration within it has made everything so much more efficient. And again, if you take one company can now do 20 clients with the same resources as it used to with five clients. It's just become so much more efficient. And I think really AI is, from the marketing perspective, going to, well, take it this way. If we look at LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, I think probably about 70 to 80% of the content you see there is AI generated, whether it's a picture or text. And this, again, it impacts the guys doing all the digital marketing out there.
Quick aside, I was having lunch with a local swimwear brand a couple of weeks ago talking about AI, and they mentioned the model photo shoot scenario that you alluded to a couple of moments ago, and they were seriously looking at AI as an alternative to the number of seasonal photo shoots they would need to be doing to launch their new, their latest models, their latest ranges, whatever it was, and sort of weighing up the cost versus does it really matter that it's clearly an AI generated model? So that was quite a fascinating conversation. But so you've mentioned how AI makes things more efficient and how subscriptions cost money. The best way to get more budget allocated is to close more clients and bring more money coming in. And you mentioned that you have a sales background. How are you primarily winning new business today at Toris?
So right now, I'd like to give a little bit context here. When I had to look at when we started, it was tough. And it was really tough because you're going in there with no name. And eventually, as we started growing and we got a few more clients here, a little bit of a bigger client here, we could leverage those use cases of our software we've built for them, the solutions we've provided. Now, we can talk about creating many solutions. Obviously, from a dev house, we can kind of build anything you need. But the thing is, have you built it before is the real question that always comes up. So what we do in-house really to try and cater for this is we have to find a gap in the market, and then we go and build a small product to demonstrate it. And then we'd put a pitch together. So in a sense where, it is probably, well, it costs you time because we don't sell actual physical products. So it costs us time building these products. And when we do build them, we really have to scope our market very carefully. Who would experience this kind of issue? And that's where we come along. So we know that maybe, industry A, B, C, and D, they all operate in a very similar way. So if we say, okay, well, we've got a product to cater for this side here, we go out there, we set up the meetings, just like you, reach out to your audience and that as well. We kind of have to take that approach of face to face because people still work with people. No matter how many, platforms we invent and robots we design, people will always still buy from people. And when we go in, we have to go in with a solution. So our entire pitch is built around solutions. It's a solution-oriented sales pitch, I guess, if we take it like that. But it all comes down to what are your pain points, and we dive into that, and we come up with a solution before we really dive too deep. As I said, hours to us that's our money. So the more hours we spend on trying to build a product that might not fit that client, the more time we've wasted. So we really try and understand our clients before we even touch a keyboard if we can.
And when you're pitching custom software work in front of the client, what tends to be the hardest objections or pushbacks that you see?
Oh wow, there's a few. The biggest one when it comes to custom software is always price, right? So it's always a pricing discussion straight from the get-go that the clients want to have. But we tend to try and avoid those discussions because, and again, I think it depends where we're pitching. If we're pitching to an international company, costs aren't always the most prevalent thing in the conversation. They want to know if you can solve the problem. So when we do the pitches, I think it always comes down to how fast can you do it as well, which is quite a challenge for us as an overall because you get a lot of platforms out there that are already built. So now a client will say, but I can just onboard on this specific platform that already exists. And then that's where the solution comes in. Now, yes, you can onboard with them, right? But do they cater for all your problems? Or do they give you 100 features you don't need and 5 features you do need? And where we take the custom build perspective, we build for the only features we build are the ones you need. And then there'll be some nice to haves, which they'll obviously add onto the wish list as well. So when we go that route, we have a much more, solution-based discussion instead of a price-based discussion.
And sticking with your sales approach, are there any particular channels, whether that's referrals or partnerships or your own sort of lead generation, whether that's outbound or inbound, that's yielding some pretty cool results for you?
Yeah, so I would say it's a bit of everything, Lawrence, to be honest. I think we do rely on marketing. We do have our own internal marketing we do as well. We've got our website, that's always an inbound lead. We always rely on something like that. But I think where we really get most of our real stable clients from, our long-term clients and our enterprise clients, all by word of mouth. So we'll deal with a specific company, solve a specific problem for them. And they would speak to one of their buddies, if it's at their local bar or barbecue, wherever they're based in the world, they'd have a discussion and they'd reach out to us. So, we deal with clients in Australia, in Europe, in the States, as well as in South Africa. So we've got quite a wide spread across it. And I must say, most of those, like I said as well a few minutes ago, when we started as freelancers, right? We had to go out and hunt for our business, and that approach has changed a lot now, where we don't hunt as much for the clients, where they really come to us most of the time.
You mentioned that you are remote by design, so everyone either works from a home office or they go into a Workshop 17 or neighbor goods, whatever it may be. That has quite an interesting impact on your company culture. And culture can often either fracture growth or enhance it. How do you maintain alignment across your team when it comes to values, communication? What's your process with that?
So I like to say, culture is really what makes or breaks a company, no matter how you look at it. And it is an actual challenge. I think that most remote based businesses do have, is that the fact that we're not all in the same office creates this kind of gap between humans. We sit in front of computers a lot, so that's why I use the term humans. But when we look at it, sitting on the other side of a camera, I have we call it an open door policy, just like you would in an office. So I literally have a call running all day on my side. And if there's ever any questions, somebody just pops onto the call. So we really try to maintain that type of environment. And some of the devs, they'll come on and they'll just hang around on the call. We don't necessarily talk all day. We don't do anything like that. It's really just for the questions and that. So we do morning calls. I think really that's where we start. We start that call in the morning, and I keep that call open for anybody to come on to. And then I think, probably for the first 10, 15, 20 minutes, sometimes even up to a half an hour. We just sit and we chat, how was your day? How was your day yesterday? Like what's your plans for the weekend? You can do as much as that. But we also use platforms like Google Chat, where we are constantly talking to each other or communicating. But yeah, I think it just comes to the type of tech we use. WhatsApp, that's also there. So we really just keep the comm lines open at all the time. And that's how we stay in touch.
I really like the open call policy. I think you're probably the first person I've heard that uses that, which is amazing. It's a really good concept. And I'm sure it just allows your team to feel like you're always available and always there to answer questions if they have any. As you scale Toris, how do you think about hiring? Are there particular traits or mindsets that you prioritize, or is it purely down to technical skill and ability?
So we like to say, we do hire on merit. But I think there's a very important part where, like I said, culture still drives a business. And I think it drives any business in that way. So when we look at who we hire or the process of hiring, we first look at how would you fit in, right? Because we've got a team of people that exist here already. And how would you fit in with those people? And then once we can establish that, we can say, okay, cool, how's your technical skill? And technical skill to us do matter a lot because, you can have one guy that is efficient because he's technically capable of doing something. And then you've got another guy that fits in well with the culture, but he might lack some technical skill. And from an efficiency perspective, we always work on deadlines. It is something we have to always consider. So when we started hiring, we initially said we can teach skill. But as we got busier, we said, well, we don't have as much time to teach skill anymore. So skill became a very big part of how we do hire now.
If we look outside of Toris at market forces and your competition, how do you see that competitive landscape evolving in South Africa in the future?
I can see, the growth in tech in South Africa has been absolutely amazing. I think there's a lot of guys out there, a lot of entrepreneurs that have pushed boundaries. And it's always great to see other businesses succeed as well. And I think really when we look at the competitive landscape, what we offer compared to what a lot of other businesses offer. I've got a lot of friends in the same industry. They work for a lot of different other businesses, either full-time or they contract as developers, whether they're full-stack developers, etc. I think the businesses as a general have their own type of goal. And because these companies operate differently in such a big industry, right? I mean, tech is big, IT is huge. We don't really run into a lot of opposition. Now, sure, if we're competing for a marketing gig, that can be pretty competitive because everybody kind of does the same thing. You want to market social media or Google or something like that. Then we can say, okay, well, then it's going to be a numbers game. Then we're either looking at pricing and things like that again, which we don't like having those types of discussions because, I always say you get what you pay for. So I'm not we can't drop below margin just to try and get some business. And I think in a lot of cases, we've actually had to walk away from some business from a competitive perspective. Now, that's really local. Now, where the real problem comes in is when we try to compete internationally. And that's even more interesting because now you've got countries like India. And India, I think they said they'll have about 50 million software engineers by 2025, right?
Wow.
Which is incredible. I mean, these are people with degrees, with masters and all of that. So you put a bunch of them together in a team and you got yourself a pretty efficient team going there. So not just that, the price related problems come in hand again there, because the cost of living in India, for instance, would be a lot lower than the cost of living in South Africa, as an example. So they would drop their prices to rock bottom and provide a product. And I actually get asked quite often, how do we compete with the India market versus the South African market as software developers? Because you look at the States probably price around 3 times more than we do by the hour. So that makes a huge difference for us, and it makes it very easy for us, for instance, to get into that type of market. The same with Europe, probably price about 3 times the price as well. Now, when we look at the South African market, it changes completely. I don't think you can really compare the South African market to the market in the States when it comes to custom software, because we are really a price conscious market in South Africa. And again, it always comes down to that. How much do I pay and how fast can I get my product? We do the same. So it's just that tug of war. But I think that's where AI makes a bit of a difference in the entire market. It brings the playing field. It makes it more even.
And are there any emerging models, things like productized services, micro agencies, platformization, that's worrying you, or maybe it's exciting you?
Nothing at this stage, of the emerging technologies would put us on the back foot. In my opinion, there's a lot of things that do excite us because we're able to integrate with it. So if a new platform comes out or something new can be done with it, we can pitch it, because most of these new platforms that do compete with us on a out of the box product kind of thing, they'll offer API integrations. So when these products get created, it actually gives us the advantage because we don't need to go and build our own anymore. We just integrate with it. And we can offer the exact same service, or we can build on top of that. So it really gives us the advantage, I guess, compared to a lot of the smaller companies maybe, or the freelancers that don't always have the time to do these complex integrations. So yeah, I think there's nothing really that scares us too much at the moment. But obviously, it's the tech industry. I might say that today and tomorrow something comes out and we're like, oh no. So that really does happen all the time.
Johann, if you think back over the last 6 to 12 months, what are you most proud of within Toris? And that could span across, technical elements, commercially, maybe big wins, or, your team and the sort of culture that you've built.
So there's quite a few things, Lawrence, and thank you for asking. I think there's quite a few big wins we had, where we were able to scale. I think this year alone we had 3x growth. And that's from a bootstrapped company, right? We funded everything from the ground up. So being able to say we've tripled everything, including our staff, that was a good one. That I think we're quite proud of that. And then I think also, we mentioned pivoting earlier. When we initially started, we outsourced, cheaper development in that sense. And now this year we've made that change to only hire South Africans. So we're based in South Africa now. We only hire South Africans, and we're pretty proud of that because there's a lot of people in South Africa that has a lot of skill. And I think, looking at the unemployment rate in the country, we're not going to make a dent in it at our size. That's for sure. But I think the fact that we do promote, not outsourcing from any other countries, we only outsource in South Africa. Most of the services we use are either in South Africa or South African built. I think that's a badge we wear proudly as South Africans. My family's been around, for almost 500 years in the country. So, proud Afrikaner from this side. And I think that really, being able to say, what, we really are proudly South African. That's one thing I can say definitely that we're proud of there.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think that's a very commendable initiative to take, and more companies should consider doing that, especially with the availability of the global resource base. So yeah,
Yes.
really, really commendable. Conversely to my question around, casting your eyes back on the last 6 to 12 months and what's working well, what's one thing that's been a big frustration for you or a constant bottleneck?
Well, I would say, a constant bottleneck would be, sure. There's quite a few that we come across. Eventually, we build solutions to overcome them. I think really when we look at the challenges we are facing right now would be the saturated market, and how do we get around that? Because everybody started building software. AI came out, and every guy that knew how to use a keyboard started building websites. They started building all these things. And really, we started seeing that across, well, we'd say, the past 12 months, right? AI has been around for longer, but there's this flare that came out where I referred to the term earlier, vibecoders. Now, these are people that just sit and chill and write software, and we kind of get that. We'd love to do that ourselves. But when we look at it from a business perspective, I think that's probably a challenge we'll face. The more AI gives, and the more advanced these platforms become, that is something we don't just see, like it might have started becoming a problem. We might have overcome it in the sense of starting using it and integrating it in our own processes. But we always have to keep an eye out for it. What comes next month, and what's going to be in 6 months' time. And I think from a business perspective, it's really important for us to know what to worry about and when to worry about it. But right now, I think, if we say the past 12 months, we've overcome most of the challenges we faced. And one of them was scaling, because everybody's investing into AI, right? And we didn't just want to throw everything into AI and let, it drive our future. But you had a lot of guys come out from being a freelancer, getting a VC involved, getting funded huge money. And then the next thing, he had a big business to run. Where I think that kind of happens pretty often in our industry, especially since, let's say, probably about 2023. I think that happened a lot. So coming back into today's market, you either adapt or you die. And that's kind of how the businesses operate. You have to make that switch. But it's all tech wise, right? We don't necessarily see a problem with, the government in the sense of where that's going to stop a business or bottleneck us in any specific way. The economic climate doesn't really affect us that much because we deal with all sorts of currencies across the world. So that really, I think, is a benefit to us in that sense. But yeah, I'd say the threat will still remain AI. In the future. Right now, we don't ever know what's going to happen. There might be a big AI bubble, and if we might be leveraging one of those tools, when this AI bubble goes, that company that's provided that tool, where do they go? And if that kind of happens, you're going to have software imploding all over the world. And I kind of see that as a thing that will happen. So again, we try not to go into that too much, leverage third-party platforms in the sense where we build on top of them, because you never know what's going to happen from there. So yeah, I guess our bottleneck right now in that sense would be that we can't, or we kind of refuse to go in all the way, because we're still watching what's going to happen within the next 6 months to a year. Otherwise, that could ruin a business completely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you need to be very strategic with the way that you implement AI, rather
Yes.
than just, throwing all your chips in the pot and, hoping that something lands. So if we follow the narrative of looking into the future in the next 12 to 24 months time, what are the top 2 to 3 priorities for Toris?
So I'd say for the next 12 months at least, we want to sink our feet in. We've recently been involved in quite a few enterprise applications. So I know the team's going to be working hard on those applications. And they're really business specific to these clients of ours. So I think for the next 12 months is really just making sure that we've got stability around those types of projects. But also at the same time, like I mentioned earlier, we're trying to scale, we're trying to get into new technology. So it's really freeing up a little bit more time on the management side, where from my perspective, we want to get into the hardware side too. And that acquires some time or should I say free time. And then probably within the next 24 months, currently we're working, let's call it about 4 or 5 different countries. We'd like to double that, and I'd say one of our goals is to double the growth within the next 24 months, which I think that's more than possible for us to do with the way we're moving forward at this current stage. I'd really say biggest goals is stability, right? In a market like today, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You want to make sure that you check the boxes, safeguard risk mitigation. Risk mitigation is huge. We have to forecast everything at least 6 months. I think probably a solid risk mitigation plan. And I'd advise that to any tech company, to be honest, because you don't know what's going to come in the next 6 months.
Sure, absolutely. So stabilize over the next 12 months and then build up the forces and look to double your current market footprint in 24 months. What do you think needs to happen for that to occur?
Oh, wow. Well, again, we need some hands, right? Even though we implement artificial intelligence in our processes, I'd say we'd have to double the hands but working on the projects. That's definitely one thing. So we've got to scale a little bit horizontally more. Infrastructure wise, we'd probably have to scale that side as well. That's the types of, we've got to get some more servers in. We run local staging servers, we run production servers, we run our local hosts. But I think from a staging perspective, those are all resources we need to put in. I'd go with, more people. That's where it all starts, right? As much as we rely on our gadgets, we have, and our AI tools, it's people that make the magic happen in the end. So I'd like to say within the next 24 months, I'd want to double my team, if not more. And I believe that would give us the ability to double our footprint internationally as well.
And if you were advising a younger version of yourself who's building a software services company like you've done, what would you tell yourself?
Probably, sure. It's difficult to know. And when you have to look at the hours you have to put in the beginning, don't give up, right? I think that's one of the things that you got to keep to. Skill is definitely one thing, as I mentioned earlier in our conversation. Skill matters a lot. But I think when it comes to building up your own tech firm, best practices, right? We got to stick to best practices, and I see that falling out a lot. If I have to give anybody advice to start anything in the tech industry, especially specifically when it comes to coding, don't let those best practices fall through. Right? Ensure that you follow those best practices when it comes to how you code. Because how you code determines the longevity of your product. It determines the scalability of your product. And if I knew some of the things that if I knew these things back then, I don't think I would have had an issue on some of the scalability issues that we first came across when it came to our applications. So that comes with the experience. But I definitely say, don't give up. The hours are grueling in the tech industry, but it's worth the while. If you can produce a product that's going to solve a problem for somebody, it's probably worth the time spent building it.
I mean, you're obviously testament to not giving up. What you're building at Toris Technologies is super interesting. You've got some really ambitious goals on your horizon. Johann, if our viewers and our listeners want to connect with Toris, where is the best place for them to do that?
It's always I'm always active on LinkedIn, so they can always find me on LinkedIn, Johann Coetzee, and also Toris Technologies or toris.co.za. Find us on our website and reach out there. That's probably the best methods of getting a hold of us.
Amazing. Well, thank you for joining us on the Aegance Offscript Podcast. It's been a fascinating conversation. I'll certainly be keeping my eye on Toris as you guys move forward and progress and take on new markets. And I wish you all the best.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Lawrence. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. Thanks, everyone.